The pain medication was wearing off, and Natalie Roberts could feel every inch of her body screaming in exhaustion. She had just spent 14 hours in labor, pushing and breathing and crying until finally her daughter had arrived. The baby girl was perfect, with tiny fingers that wrapped around Natalie's thumb and the smallest nose she had ever seen. The nurses had cleaned her up and placed her in Natalie's arms just 20 minutes ago, and despite the overwhelming fatigue, Natalie couldn't stop staring at her child's face. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and something metallic that Natalie couldn't quite place. Her dark hair stuck to her forehead with sweat, and her hospital gown was wrinkled and uncomfortable. But none of that mattered because she was a mother now. After 3 years of marriage to Brandon, they finally had their baby. She imagined him bursting through the door any moment, his face lit up with joy, ready to meet his daughter. She heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Her heart lifted. Finally, Brandon was here. He had left 6 hours ago, claiming he needed to get some paperwork from the house, important documents about the birth certificate and insurance. It had seemed odd that he would leave during her labor, but Natalie had been too focused on breathing through contractions to argue. The door opened. Brandon walked in, but he wasn't alone. Behind him came a woman Natalie recognized from his office Christmas party. Simone something. She was tall and wore a blue dress that looked expensive, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat style. Why would Brandon bring a coworker to meet their newborn daughter? Brandon, Natalie said, her voice weak. Come meet her. She's beautiful. Brandon didn't move toward the bed. His face held no warmth, no excitement. Instead, he reached into the leather bag he carried and pulled out a manila folder. Simone stood beside him, her hand resting on his arm in a gesture that was far too familiar, too comfortable. Natalie, we need to talk, Brandon said. His voice was flat, businesslike. The baby squirmed in Natalie's arms. She pulled her daughter closer, suddenly feeling protective. What are you talking about? Brandon, what's going on? Simone stepped forward. She didn't look uncomfortable or apologetic. In fact, she looked almost pleased. This has been going on for 15 months now. Brandon and I are together. We're in love. The words didn't make sense. Natalie looked down at her daughter, then back up at her husband. What? Brandon walked closer and dropped the folder on the edge of her hospital bed. Divorce papers. I've already signed them. You just need to sign too. My lawyer says we can have this done quickly since we don't have much in terms of assets to divide. Natalie's hands started shaking. The baby began to fuss, sensing her mother's distress. You're joking. This is some kind of horrible joke. I'm not joking, Brandon said. He looked at Simone and something passed between them. Something intimate that made Natalie's stomach turn. I should have done this months ago, but the pregnancy complicated things. Now that the baby's here, we can move forward. The baby, Natalie repeated. Her voice sounded strange, distant. Your daughter. She was just born. You're talking about her like she's a problem that got solved. Simone crossed her arms. Brandon will pay child support, obviously. But let's be honest, Natalie. You two were never right for each other. He needs someone who matches his ambition, someone who understands his career goals. Natalie had given up her own career dreams to support Brandon. She had taken a simple accounting job that let her work from home, managing their household, cooking his meals, supporting him through every promotion and every setback. And now, holding their hours-old daughter, he was leaving her for someone else. Get out, Natalie whispered. Brandon picked up the folder and placed it on the table beside her bed. Look over the papers. My lawyer's number is inside. The sooner we finalize this, the better for everyone. Get out, Natalie said again, louder this time. A nurse appeared in the doorway, drawn by the raised voice. Is everything okay in here? We're leaving, Simone said smoothly. She took Brandon's arm and steered him toward the door. Brandon glanced back once at Natalie and the baby, but there was no emotion in his eyes. Nothing that looked like regret or love or even basic human decency. They left. The nurse approached Natalie's bed, concern written across her face. Honey, do you need me to call someone for you? Family? Natalie shook her head. She had no family. Her parents had died in a car accident 5 years ago, and she was an only child. Brandon had been her whole world for 3 years. She looked down at the tiny face of her daughter, at the perfect little human who had just entered a broken family. No, Natalie said quietly. I don't need anyone. The nurse hesitated, then patted her shoulder. I'll give you some privacy. Press the button if you need anything. After the nurse left, Natalie sat in the silence of the hospital room. The machines beeped steadily. Outside the window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Her body ached everywhere. Her heart felt like it had been torn open. But as she looked at her daughter, something else began to grow inside her. Not sadness. Not despair. Something harder and colder and infinitely more powerful. Brandon thought she was nobody. He thought she was just a simple woman with a simple job and no prospects. He had no idea who she really was. Neither did Simone. They had both made the biggest mistake of their lives. Natalie adjusted the baby in her arms and reached for her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found a number she hadn't called in 3 years. Her finger hovered over it for just a moment before she pressed dial. The phone rang twice before a professional voice answered. Vaughn Global Industries Executive Office. This is Natalie Vaughn, she said, using her real last name for the first time since she had married Brandon. I need to speak with Gerald immediately. Tell him the heiress is ready to come home. There was a pause, then the sound of fumbling. Miss Vaughn? We thought you were. I'll transfer you right away. While the call transferred, Natalie looked down at her daughter. You're going to have everything, she whispered. Everything they tried to take from us. And your father is going to learn what it means to betray a Vaughn. The phone clicked. Natalie? Gerald's voice came through, warm and relieved. Is it really you? It's me, she said. And I need you to do exactly what I say. Outside her hospital room, the world continued on, unaware that Natalie Roberts, the quiet accountant who had just been handed divorce papers, was actually Natalie Vaughn, sole heir to a business empire worth billions. Brandon had walked away thinking he had won. But the game had only just begun, and he had no idea he was playing against someone who had every advantage, every resource, and now, every reason to show him the consequences of his choices. 3 years and 2 months earlier, Natalie Vaughn had stood in her father's office at the top of the Vaughn Tower, looking out over the city. Her reflection in the glass showed a young woman in a green designer suit, her hair styled perfectly, diamond earrings catching the light. She looked every inch the billionaire heiress she was. You can't be serious, her father had said behind her. You want to give all this up for what? To pretend to be ordinary? Natalie had turned to face him. I don't want to pretend, Dad. I want to know what it's like to be loved for myself, not for the Vaughn name or the Vaughn money. Every man I've dated has either wanted access to our business or wanted to marry into wealth. I need to know if real love even exists. Her father, Richard Vaughn, had built his empire from nothing. He understood ambition and drive, but he had never understood his daughter's need for something more than money could buy. And if you find this real love? What then? Then I'll tell him the truth, Natalie had said. Once I know he loves me for who I am, I can bring him into this world. But not before. Her father had sighed and agreed, making her promise to check in regularly with Gerald, the family lawyer and her father's most trusted advisor. Natalie had changed her last name to Roberts, her mother's maiden name. She had moved to a modest apartment across town, taken a job as a simple accountant at a small firm, and started living on a regular salary. That's where she had met Brandon. He worked in sales at a mid-sized logistics company and had needed help with his taxes. He was charming and funny, and he had no idea who she really was. They dated for 8 months before he proposed, and Natalie had felt certain she had found what she was looking for. Brandon loved her without knowing about the billions. He loved simple Natalie Roberts. Except he hadn't. Not really. Now, lying in the hospital bed with her newborn daughter sleeping in her arms, Natalie understood that Brandon had never loved her at all. He had loved the idea of a woman who would support his ambitions without overshadowing them. He wanted someone small enough to make him feel big. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Gerald. I've made the arrangements, he said without preamble. Your father's estate is completely settled. As of 6 months ago when he passed, everything transferred to you as planned. The board has been managing operations, waiting for your return. They'll be relieved to hear from you. Natalie felt a pang of grief. Her father had died while she was 5 months pregnant, and she had attended his funeral as Natalie Roberts, sitting in the back, unknown to everyone who had worked with him. She had wanted to maintain her cover until after the baby was born, until she could make decisions clearly. Now she realized that had been a mistake. She should have reclaimed her identity the moment Brandon started showing signs of distance. What do you need first? Gerald asked. A place to live. Not an apartment. A house. Somewhere safe and private with good security. And I need the best nanny service in the city. Someone vetted, trustworthy, good with infants. Consider it done. What about Brandon? Natalie looked at the divorce papers on her bedside table. I'll sign them. Give him exactly what he thinks he wants. A quick, Clean divorce with minimal child support because I'm supposedly just a poor accountant. Let him think he got away with everything. And then I take back my life, Natalie said. I rebuild my empire, I raise my daughter, and I make sure that Brandon understands exactly what he threw away. Not by going back to him. Never that. But by becoming so successful, so powerful, that every time he hears my name, he'll know he had a chance at something real and destroyed it for someone like Simone. Gerald was quiet for a moment. Your father would be proud. He always said you had more steel in you than anyone gave you credit for. After they hung up, Natalie carefully placed her daughter in the hospital bassinet and picked up the divorce papers. She read through them slowly. Brandon was offering her almost nothing. A tiny amount of child support, no alimony, no division of assets beyond her personal belongings. He had even claimed their savings account, which had mostly been funded by his salary anyway since she had been living on her modest accountant wages. She pulled out a pen and signed her name on every line that needed her signature. Natalie Roberts was ending. Natalie Vaughn was coming back. A different nurse came in to check on her, younger than the first one. How are you feeling? Stronger, Natalie said, and she meant it. Over the next 2 days in the hospital, Natalie made plans. Gerald arranged for a house in an exclusive neighborhood, fully furnished and ready for move-in. He hired a nanny named Patricia, a 50-year-old woman with credentials from the best families in the city. He also contacted Natalie's business team, letting them know their CEO would be taking an active role again within the month. Natalie had visitors. Not Brandon. He never came back. But Gerald came, bringing flowers and a tablet computer loaded with all the business reports she had missed. Her father's assistant, an efficient woman named Ruth, came to pay her respects and offer support. Neither of them judged her for the situation she found herself in. You did nothing wrong, Ruth told her firmly. You trusted someone who turned out to be unworthy of that trust. That's on him, not you. When Natalie was finally discharged, Patricia was waiting with a car service. Not a limousine, nothing flashy. Just a clean, safe vehicle to take them to the new house. Natalie buckled her daughter into the car seat, still marveling at how small and perfect she was. Have you chosen a name? Patricia asked gently as they drove. Natalie looked down at her daughter. Hope. Her name is Hope Vaughn. Beautiful, Patricia said. Strong name for a strong girl. The house was perfect. 3 stories but not ostentatious. A nursery had already been set up with everything a baby could need. There was a study for Natalie, a full security system, and a garden in the back. It was a home, not just a house. That night, after Hope was fed and sleeping peacefully in her crib, Natalie stood in her new study and opened her laptop. She logged into accounts she hadn't accessed in years. Vaughn Global Industries had continued operating smoothly under the board's management, but it was time for the real leader to return. She composed an email to the board of directors, informing them of a meeting in 2 weeks. She would introduce herself properly then, lay out her vision for the company's future, and begin the process of expanding their reach. But there was one other thing she needed to do. She pulled up the business records for Brandon's company, Sterling Logistics. It was a mid-sized firm, successful enough but nothing special. She traced their client lists, their revenue streams, their investors. Then she smiled. Vaughn Global Industries had the resources to acquire Sterling Logistics 10 times over. But Natalie wasn't going to do that. Not yet. First, she would let Brandon enjoy his victory. Let him marry Simone, let him think he had traded up. Let him build his career at Sterling Logistics, thinking he was climbing toward success. And then, when he was comfortable and confident, Natalie would move. Not with anger. Not with visible revenge. But with the cold precision of a businesswoman who knew exactly how to dismantle someone's world piece by piece. She closed her laptop and went to check on Hope one more time before bed. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of the changes happening around her. You'll never want for anything, Natalie whispered. And you'll never need to hide who you are to be loved. I'll make sure of that. The next 6 months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and strategic planning. Natalie fell into a routine that would have exhausted most people but energized her. She woke at 5 every morning, checked on Hope, showered, and spent 2 hours reviewing business reports before Patricia arrived at 7. Then she would spend time with Hope, feeding her, playing with her, being present as her daughter learned to smile, to laugh, to reach for toys. At 9, Patricia would take over primary care, and Natalie would retreat to her study for meetings. Video conferences with the board, calls with investors, reviews of acquisition opportunities. She worked until 2, then took a break to be with Hope again, giving Patricia time off. The evenings were family time, just Natalie and her daughter, building a bond that nothing could break. Gerald visited weekly, bringing updates and handling the legal details of her re-emergence into the business world. "The board is impressed," he told her during one visit. "Your father trained you well. The company's stock price has gone up 12% since you took active control." "What about Brandon?" Natalie asked. She tried to keep her tone casual, but Gerald knew her too well. "He's doing well actually. Got promoted to regional sales director at Sterling Logistics. Simone is still with him. They're living in a condo downtown, nothing fancy but comfortable." Natalie nodded. "Good. Let him feel successful. Let him think he made the right choice." She had signed the divorce papers and sent them back through a lawyer. The divorce was finalized within 3 months, just as Brandon had wanted. He had sent exactly 2 child support checks, both for the minimum amount required by law. After that, nothing. No calls to ask about Hope, no visits, no interest in his daughter's life. At first it had hurt. Not because Natalie wanted Brandon back, but because Hope deserved better than a father who could walk away so easily. But then Natalie realized this was better. Hope would grow up knowing her mother's strength, not her father's weakness. When Hope was 4 months old, Natalie made her first major business move. She had been researching Sterling Logistics extensively and found they were struggling with one of their biggest clients, a manufacturing company called Apex Industries. The relationship was fraying over shipping delays and cost disputes. Vaughn Global Industries happened to have a logistics division, smaller than Sterling's but growing. Natalie arranged a meeting with Apex Industries CEO. "We can handle your shipping needs more efficiently," she told him, presenting data that her team had compiled. "Better routes, lower costs, faster delivery times." The CEO was interested but cautious. "We've been with Sterling for 5 years. They know our business." "They also keep disappointing you," Natalie pointed out gently. "We're offering a 6-month trial. If we don't outperform them significantly, you can return to Sterling with no penalties." He agreed. Within a month, Apex Industries had moved all their shipping to Vaughn Global Industries. Sterling Logistics lost their second biggest client, and Brandon's division took the blame. Natalie heard through business channels that he had been called into several difficult meetings with upper management. She felt nothing about it. No satisfaction, no guilt. It was simply business. If Sterling couldn't keep their clients happy, they deserved to lose them. At 6 months, Hope was sitting up on her own, babbling constantly and reaching for everything. Natalie had her nursery repainted in bright red and blue, colors that would stimulate her daughter's developing vision. She bought books and toys, spent hours reading to Hope even though the baby couldn't understand the words yet. Patricia often commented on how present Natalie was. "Most wealthy mothers I've worked for barely spend an hour a day with their children. You're different." "Hope is my priority," Natalie said simply. "The business is important, but she comes first." One afternoon, while Hope napped, Natalie received a call from her head of acquisitions. "We have an opportunity. Sterling Logistics is shopping for investors. Their last quarterly earnings were down, and they need capital to expand." Natalie sat up straighter. "What kind of investment are they looking for?" "Minority stake. They want to maintain control but need the cash flow. Several firms are interested." "Make an offer," Natalie said. "Through a shell corporation. I don't want my name anywhere near this yet. Offer them exactly what they're asking for, but structure it so we have the option to increase our stake later if certain conditions are met." "What conditions?" Natalie thought about it. "Performance benchmarks. If they fail to meet specific growth targets over the next 2 years, we get the option to acquire additional shares at a predetermined price. Make sure the targets are ambitious but not impossible." "Understood." The deal went through 3 weeks later. Sterling Logistics accepted the investment from what they believed was an independent equity firm. They had no idea the money ultimately came from Vaughn Global Industries. Brandon probably celebrated the investment, thinking his company was on solid ground again. Natalie marked the date in her calendar. 2 years from now, if Sterling failed to hit their targets, she would have the option to take controlling interest. She would own the company where Brandon worked. And he wouldn't know until it was far too late to do anything about it. But that was future planning. In the present, Natalie had a daughter to raise and a business to run. She hired more staff for Vaughn Global Industries, expanded into new markets, and made strategic acquisitions that strengthened their position in every sector they operated in. She also started building a life outside of business and motherhood. She joined a gym not to meet people but to stay healthy and strong. She attended charity events, writing checks to causes she believed in. She said no to every man who showed interest, politely but firmly. Romance was not on her agenda. Hope turned 6 months old on a sunny Tuesday in October. Natalie took the whole day off, something she rarely did. They went to the park, just the two of them. Hope sat in her stroller, wide-eyed at the trees and the other children playing. Natalie pushed her along the path, feeling something close to peace. A woman about Natalie's age walked past with a toddler. They made eye contact and shared a smile, that universal acknowledgement between mothers. It was a small moment, but it reminded Natalie that there was a whole world out there beyond business strategy and careful revenge. That evening, after Hope was asleep, Natalie stood in her study and looked at the progress reports spread across her desk. Vaughn Global Industries was thriving. Her daughter was healthy and happy. Brandon was becoming irrelevant, just another name from her past. She thought about her father and wished he could see her now. See how she had taken everything he built and was making it even stronger. See his granddaughter growing up smart and loved. "I'm doing it, Dad," she whispered to the empty room. "I'm building something that will last." Outside her window, the city lights sparkled like stars. Natalie turned off her desk lamp and went upstairs. She checked on Hope one more time, watching her daughter sleep peacefully in her crib. Then she went to her own room and slept the deep sleep of someone who knew exactly where they were going and how they would get there. Brandon had thought leaving her would set him free. He had no idea he had actually set her free instead. When Hope was 9 months old, Natalie made her public return to the business world. She had been operating quietly until then, attending board meetings via video, making decisions through intermediaries. But it was time to step fully into her role as CEO of Vaughn Global Industries. The press conference was held in the main conference room of Vaughn Tower. Reporters filled the seats, cameras positioned at the back, everyone curious about the mysterious heiress who had been absent for years and was now taking control of one of the city's largest corporations. Natalie walked onto the small stage wearing a red suit that projected power and confidence. Her hair was styled simply, her makeup minimal. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman who had nothing to prove because she had already won. "Thank you all for coming," she began. No notes, no teleprompter. She had practiced this speech 100 times but wanted it to feel natural. "My name is Natalie Vaughn, and I'm honored to serve as CEO of Vaughn Global Industries. Some of you may have questions about my absence from public life over the past few years. The answer is simple. I was living as a private citizen, learning what it meant to build a life outside the bubble of wealth and privilege." She paused, letting that sink in. "That experience taught me valuable lessons about what matters most. Family, integrity, hard work. These are the principles I'll bring to my leadership of this company. Under my direction, Vaughn Global Industries will continue to grow, but we'll do it responsibly, ethically, and with a commitment to giving back to the community." The questions came fast after that. Where had she been? What had she been doing? Was she married? Did she have children? Natalie answered the business questions directly and deflected the personal ones with practiced ease. "My private life is private. What matters is my commitment to this company and to the thousands of people who work here." One reporter raised his hand. "Ms. Vaughn, there are rumors that you've been quietly acquiring stakes in several companies. Can you comment on your acquisition strategy?" Natalie smiled. "Vaughn Global Industries is always looking for opportunities to expand in ways that make strategic sense. We're interested in companies that share our values and can benefit from our resources. I can't comment on specific acquisitions, but you can expect to see us grow significantly over the next few years." After the press conference, Gerald met her in her office. "You did well. The board is pleased." "And Sterling Logistics?" Natalie asked. Gerald pulled out a folder. "They're struggling. Lost 2 more major clients in the past month. Brandon's division is under review. There's talk of restructuring, possibly layoffs." Natalie scanned the documents. Sterling had 9 months left before the performance benchmarks in their investment agreement would be evaluated. At their current trajectory, they would fall short by a significant margin, giving Vaughn Global Industries the option to acquire controlling interest. "Keep monitoring," she said. "But don't make any moves yet. Let it play out naturally." That afternoon, Natalie left work early to pick up Hope from Patricia. She had started doing this more often, wanting to maximize time with her daughter before bedtime. Hope was crawling now, getting into everything, laughing constantly. She had Natalie's dark eyes and Brandon's nose, a reminder every day of where she came from but not who she would become. "Mama," Hope said clearly as Natalie walked in. It was a new word, only a few days old, but it never failed to make Natalie's heart swell. "Hi, baby girl," Natalie said, scooping her up. Did you have a good day? Hope babbled something incomprehensible and grabbed at Natalie's necklace. Patricia smiled from the kitchen doorway. She's been asking for you all afternoon. They spent the evening on the floor of the living room, building towers out of blocks that Hope would immediately knock down, laughing every time. This was what mattered. Not revenge, not business victories, but these simple moments with her daughter. Later, after Hope was asleep, Natalie's phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Natalie? It's Brandon. She almost dropped the phone. She hadn't heard his voice in 9 months, not since the hospital. How did you get this number? I still have it from before. Look, I know this is weird, but I need to talk to you about something. Natalie's voice turned cold. We have nothing to talk about. You made your choice. It's about child support. The amount we agreed on. I'm having some financial difficulties, and I was wondering if we could reduce it temporarily. Just for a few months until things stabilize at work. The amount he was paying was already minimal, barely enough to buy diapers for a month. And he wanted to reduce it. No. Natalie, please. Be reasonable. You have a job. You're doing fine. I'm just asking for a little flexibility. The answer is no. You signed an agreement. Either honor it or deal with the legal consequences. She hung up before he could respond. Her hands were shaking, not from sadness but from anger. He had walked away from his daughter without looking back, and now he wanted to reduce the tiny amount he contributed to her care. The selfishness was staggering. Natalie called Gerald immediately. Brandon just called asking to reduce child support. I said no. If he doesn't pay, I want you to pursue every legal avenue available. Consider it done, Gerald said. Though I should mention if he's having financial troubles, he probably can't pay even if we take him to court. I don't care about the money, Natalie said. I care about the principle. He made a commitment to his daughter, and he needs to honor it. Over the next few weeks, Natalie focused on expanding Vaughn Global Industries. She opened new offices in 3 cities, hired top talent from competitors, and launched an initiative to improve working conditions across all their divisions. The business press started calling her a visionary, comparing her favorably to her father. She also started attending more social events. Not to date, but to network and represent her company properly. At a charity gala, she met several other CEOs, made connections that would prove valuable, and wrote a check for $500,000 to a children's hospital. A man approached her near the end of the evening. Mid-40s, well-dressed, confident. Ms. Vaughn? I'm Thomas Grant. I run Grant Financial. I've been hoping to meet you. They talked for a few minutes about business. He was polite, professional, and at the end of the conversation he asked if she would like to have dinner sometime. That's kind of you, Natalie said. But I'm not dating right now. I have a young daughter and she takes up most of my free time. I understand. The offer stands if you change your mind. She appreciated that he didn't push. But as she drove home that night, Natalie realized she had no interest in dating anyone. Not Thomas Grant, not anyone. Her life was full enough with Hope and her work. Romance felt like an unnecessary complication. When she got home, Patricia had already left for the evening. Natalie checked on Hope, who was sleeping peacefully. She stood in the nursery watching her daughter's chest rise and fall with each breath, and felt grateful for this life she had built. Brandon had wanted to diminish her, to make himself feel bigger by making her smaller. Instead, he had freed her to become someone far more powerful than she had ever been before. And he still had no idea. To him, she was just Natalie Roberts, struggling single mother, barely making ends meet. The truth would come eventually. But Natalie was patient. She had learned that the best revenge wasn't loud or obvious. It was quiet and inevitable, like water wearing away stone. Brandon's world was eroding around him, and he didn't even know she was the one controlling the flood. Hope turned 1 year old in April. Natalie threw a small party at the house, inviting Patricia and a few colleagues who had become friends. There was a cake decorated with bright blue frosting, balloons, and more presents than one toddler could possibly need. Hope sat in her high chair, smashing cake into her face, laughing at the attention. Natalie took photos, dozens of them, wanting to remember every moment. A year ago, she had been lying in a hospital bed, heartbroken and betrayed. Now she was strong, successful, and watching her daughter celebrate a milestone. The transformation felt complete. But life had other plans. 2 days after the party, Gerald called with news. Sterling Logistics just released their quarterly earnings. They're down significantly. They won't meet the performance benchmarks. Natalie had been expecting this, but hearing it confirmed still sent a surge of anticipation through her. How long until we can exercise our option? 4 months. But there's something else you should know. Simone is pregnant. Natalie paused. She hadn't expected that. How do you know? One of my contacts saw her at a doctor's office. She's about 3 months along. So Brandon was going to be a father again. Natalie felt nothing about it. He had abandoned hope, and he would probably do fine with this new child since he actually wanted to be with the mother. That was his choice to make. It doesn't change anything, Natalie said. Proceed with monitoring Sterling. When the time comes, we exercise our option. She hung up and looked at Hope, who was playing with blocks on the living room floor. Her daughter was perfect and loved and had everything she needed. What Brandon did with his new family was irrelevant. That weekend, Natalie decided to take Hope to a parent-toddler class. She had been meaning to do it for months but had been too busy. The class was held at a community center, nothing fancy, just a space where parents could bring their young children to play and socialize. Natalie walked in feeling slightly out of place. She was used to boardrooms and business meetings, not sitting on foam mats singing songs with other parents. But Hope seemed delighted, immediately crawling toward a pile of toys. A man sat down next to her. First time here? Natalie looked over. He was probably in his early 30s, wearing jeans and a green shirt, with kind eyes and an easy smile. A little boy, maybe 18 months old, played nearby. Yes, Natalie said. I'm Natalie. This is Hope. Adrian Foster. That's my son Lucas. He gestured toward the little boy. We've been coming here for about 3 months. It's good for kids to socialize early. They talked while their children played. Adrian was an architect, recently divorced, sharing custody of Lucas with his ex-wife. He was friendly and genuine, with none of the posturing Natalie had learned to expect from men once they knew who she was. Because he didn't know. She had introduced herself as just Natalie, and he had no reason to connect her to Vaughn Global Industries. For the first time in a long time, Natalie felt like she could just be herself. Maybe we'll see you next week, Adrian said as the class ended. Maybe, Natalie agreed. She went back the following week and the week after that. It became part of their routine. Hope and Lucas would play together while Natalie and Adrian talked about parenting, about work in general terms, about life as single parents. Natalie was careful never to mention specifics about her job, and Adrian never pushed for details. Meanwhile, Sterling Logistics continued to struggle. They lost another major client, this time to a competitor that had nothing to do with Natalie. The company's stock price dropped. Brandon's division was restructured, and half his team was laid off. He survived the cuts, but his salary was reduced by 20%. Natalie heard all this through Gerald's reports and felt detached from it. She wasn't causing all of Brandon's problems. The business world was competitive and Sterling had failed to adapt. She had simply positioned herself to take advantage when they inevitably fell short. 3 months passed. Hope started taking her first wobbly steps, holding onto furniture and laughing when she fell. Natalie was there for every milestone, capturing them on video, marveling at how fast her daughter was growing. She and Adrian developed a comfortable friendship. After class one day, he invited her and Hope to have lunch at a nearby cafe. Natalie hesitated, then agreed. It was just lunch, just 2 friends with their children. They sat outside in the sunshine, their kids in high chairs, eating simple food and talking about nothing important. Adrian told funny stories about architecture clients who wanted impossible designs. Natalie shared vague anecdotes about difficult meetings and demanding bosses, keeping her actual role deliberately unclear. What about Hope's father? Adrian asked at one point, then immediately looked apologetic. Sorry? That's too personal. It's fine, Natalie said. He's not in the picture. His choice, not mine. Adrian nodded. Lucas's mom and I split because we wanted different things. But we both still love Lucas. I can't imagine just walking away from him. Some people find it easier than others, Natalie said quietly. After lunch, as they walked back to their cars, Adrian said, I really enjoy these conversations. Would you want to get coffee sometime? Without the kids. Just as friends. Natalie looked at him. He was attractive, kind, clearly a good father. But she wasn't ready for anything beyond friendship. I have a lot on my plate right now. But I like our friendship. Let's keep things simple. Simple works, Adrian said, smiling. I'll see you next week at class. That night, after Hope was asleep, Natalie received an email from Gerald. The subject line read, Sterling Logistics Final Report. She opened it and read through the detailed analysis. Sterling had failed to meet their performance benchmarks by a significant margin, Vaughn Global Industries now had the option to acquire up to 51% of the company's shares at the predetermined price, giving them controlling interest. Natalie drafted a response, instructing Gerald to exercise the option immediately but to keep Vaughn Global Industries' involvement quiet for now. They would operate through the Shell Corporation initially, only revealing the true owner once the acquisition was complete. "How long until Brandon finds out?" she asked in a follow-up call. 2 weeks, maybe 3, Gerald said. "Once we take control, we'll announce restructuring. His position will almost certainly be eliminated. Make sure he gets a severance package," Natalie said. "I'm not trying to leave him destitute. I just want him out of any position of power." "Understood." Natalie ended the call and sat in the quiet of her study. She felt no triumph, no excitement. This was just business, just the natural consequence of Brandon's company failing to perform. If Sterling had succeeded, she wouldn't have been able to take control. They had lost on their own merits. But the timing was interesting. Brandon had left her thinking he was trading up, choosing ambition and success over what he saw as a simple, boring life. Now his career was falling apart while Natalie's was soaring. The universe had a sense of irony. She went upstairs and looked in on Hope one more time before bed. Her daughter slept peacefully, unaware of the business machinations happening around her. As it should be. Hope would grow up knowing her mother was strong and successful, but she would never be burdened with the details of old conflicts. Natalie slept well that night, dreamless and deep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and another chance to build the life she wanted for herself and her daughter. Brandon was becoming irrelevant, just a footnote in her past. And that, Natalie realized, was the best revenge of all. The acquisition of Sterling Logistics was finalized on a rainy Tuesday morning. Natalie sat in her office at Vaughn Tower, reviewing the final paperwork while rain streaked down the windows behind her. She signed her name with a pen that had belonged to her father, feeling the weight of the moment. Vaughn Global Industries now owned controlling interest in the company where Brandon worked. He didn't know it yet. The announcement wouldn't go out until tomorrow, giving the new management team time to prepare for the restructuring. Natalie had handpicked the new CEO herself, a woman named Jennifer Hayes who had turned around 3 struggling companies in the past decade. Jennifer was smart, ruthless when necessary, and had no patience for underperforming divisions. "Brandon's department is hemorrhaging money," Jennifer had told Natalie during their planning meeting. "We'll need to eliminate at least 60% of the positions and completely restructure how they approach client relationships." "Do what's necessary," Natalie had said. "But make sure everyone gets fair severance packages. I want this done professionally." Now, as the rain continued to fall, Natalie thought about what tomorrow would bring. Brandon would arrive at work to find everything changed. New management, new policies, and very likely, a notice that his position was being eliminated. She felt no guilt about it. Business was business. Sterling had been failing long before Vaughn Global Industries got involved. If anything, they were saving the company from complete collapse. The fact that Brandon worked there was almost coincidental at this point. Her phone buzzed. Adrian texting. "Lucas has a cold, so we'll miss class this week. Hope you and Hope are well." Natalie smiled and texted back a quick response wishing Lucas a speedy recovery. Her friendship with Adrian had become one of the bright spots in her routine. He was easy to talk to, never demanding, content with the boundaries she had set. They met at class every week, occasionally grabbed lunch afterward, and kept things light and friendly. He still had no idea who she really was, and Natalie liked it that way. With Adrian she could be just Natalie, single mom, regular person. It was a relief from the constant performance of being a CEO. The next day the announcement went out. Vaughn Global Industries revealed their acquisition of Sterling Logistics. The business press covered it extensively, praising Natalie's strategic move and speculating about what changes would come. At Sterling's offices across town, chaos erupted. Employees gathered in confused groups, reading the email that explained their company had new ownership. Managers scrambled for information. And in the sales division, Brandon sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen in disbelief. Gerald's sources reported back to Natalie throughout the day. Brandon had tried to call several people in upper management but couldn't get through. By afternoon, Jennifer Hayes arrived at Sterling's offices and began holding meetings with department heads. Brandon's meeting was scheduled for 4 in the afternoon. He sat across from Jennifer and 2 HR representatives, listening as they explained that his position was being eliminated as part of the restructuring. He would receive 6 months of severance pay and could apply for other positions within the company, though none were currently available at his level. "This is insane," Brandon had apparently said. I've been with this company for 5 years. My performance reviews have been excellent. The decision isn't based on individual performance, Jennifer had responded calmly. It's about restructuring the organization for long-term success. I'm sorry. He was given an hour to pack his belongings and escorted out by security. Standard procedure for layoffs, nothing personal, but it still must have stung. Natalie heard all of this from Gerald over dinner that evening. Hope sat in her high chair eating cut-up fruit, while Natalie processed the information. How did he take it? She asked. Not well from what I hear. He was angry, kept insisting there must be some mistake. But it's done. He's no longer an employee of Sterling Logistics. Natalie nodded. And Simone? Still pregnant. About 6 months now. I don't know how this will affect their relationship. That night, Natalie's private phone rang. The number was blocked, but she answered anyway. Hello? You did this. Brandon's voice was tight with anger. I know you did this somehow. I don't know what you're talking about, Natalie said calmly. Sterling gets bought out and suddenly I'm fired? That's not a coincidence. What did you do, complain to someone? Did you tell them I was a bad employee? Natalie almost laughed. He still had no idea. He thought she was just Natalie Roberts, simple accountant, somehow wielding influence she shouldn't have. Brandon, I had nothing to do with your employment situation. You were laid off because your company was restructured. It happens. I don't believe you. Believe whatever you want. But stop calling me. We have no relationship. You walked away from that when you handed me divorce papers in a hospital room. She hung up and blocked the number. He called twice more from different numbers, but she didn't answer. Finally, the call stopped. 2 weeks later, Gerald told her that Simone had left Brandon. The pregnancy, combined with his sudden unemployment and mounting debt, had been too much. She had moved back in with her parents and filed for child support. Brandon was alone, unemployed, and facing obligations to 2 children. Natalie felt no sympathy. He had created this situation with his own choices. She focused on her own life. Hope was thriving, hitting every developmental milestone. The toddler classes continued, and Natalie's friendship with Adrian deepened. One afternoon after class he suggested they take the kids to the park. It was a beautiful day, sunny and warm. Hope and Lucas played in the sandbox while Natalie and Adrian sat on a nearby bench, watching them. Can I ask you something? Adrian said. Sure. What do you do for work? I realize we've been friends for months and I don't actually know. Natalie had known this question would come eventually. I work in business. Management consulting mostly. It wasn't entirely a lie. As CEO she did manage and consult, just at a much higher level than the phrase implied. Adrian nodded, accepting the vague answer. Must be demanding. But you always make time for Hope. That's impressive. She's my priority, Natalie said simply. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play. Natalie realized she was genuinely happy in this moment. Not because of business success or revenge completed, but because she had built a life that felt authentic and good. Later that week, she attended a charity event. As CEO of Vaughn Global Industries, she was expected to show up at these functions, network, and write substantial checks. She wore a blue dress, her hair styled elegantly, looking every inch the billionaire executive she was. A reporter approached her. Ms. Vaughn, can you comment on the Sterling Logistics acquisition? Some people are calling it a hostile takeover. It was a straightforward business transaction, Natalie said smoothly. Sterling needed capital and new leadership. We provided both. The company is already showing signs of improvement. What about the layoffs? Unfortunate but necessary. We provided generous severance packages and are helping displaced employees find new positions. It's never easy, but sometimes difficult decisions are required for long-term health. She moved on before he could ask more questions. Across the room she saw Thomas Grant, the CEO who had asked her out months ago. He nodded in greeting and she nodded back. No awkwardness, no pressure. Just professional courtesy. Natalie left the event early, eager to get home to Hope. She paid the babysitter, checked on her sleeping daughter, and changed into comfortable clothes. Then she sat in her study and reviewed reports on Sterling's progress under new management. Revenue was already stabilizing. New contracts had been signed. The restructuring was working exactly as planned. In a year or 2, Sterling would be profitable again, stronger than it had been in Brandon's time there. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Brandon. I know you won't answer calls. But I need help. Simone's lawyer is demanding child support I can't afford. Can we talk? Please. Natalie stared at the message for a long moment. Then she deleted it and blocked the number. She had no obligation to help him. He had made his choices and now he was living with the consequences. That was how life worked. She put her phone away and went to bed, sleeping soundly, untroubled by Brandon's problems. Her life was moving forward and he was not part of it. Not anymore. Not ever again. 3 months passed in steady forward motion. Hope was 15 months old now, walking confidently, saying simple words, becoming more of a little person every day. Natalie watched her daughter's personality emerge, seeing flashes of determination and curiosity that reminded her of herself. Sterling Logistics continued to improve under Vaughn Global Industries ownership. Jennifer Hayes had done an excellent job cutting waste, improving client relationships, and rebuilding the company's reputation. The business press had stopped calling it a hostile takeover and started calling it a successful turnaround. Natalie's friendship with Adrian had grown into something deeper, though neither of them had acknowledged it out loud. They saw each other twice a week now, sometimes at the toddler class, sometimes at the park, once at a children's museum. Lucas and Hope played together easily, and Natalie found herself looking forward to these simple outings in a way that surprised her. One Saturday afternoon they met at a cafe. Hope and Lucas were in high chairs, sharing a plate of fruit, while Natalie and Adrian drank coffee and talked. "I need to tell you something," Adrian said. He looked nervous, which was unusual for him. "I've been thinking about this for a while. I really value our friendship, but I've started to feel more than that. I like you, Natalie. As more than a friend." Natalie's heart sped up. She had sensed this was coming but hadn't been ready to face it. "Adrian? I know you said you weren't ready for dating," he continued. "And I respect that. But I wanted to be honest about how I feel. If you need more time, I can wait. If you don't feel the same way, I understand and we can keep things as they are." Natalie looked at him. He was kind, genuine, a good father, and someone who made her laugh. She realized she did have feelings for him, had been developing them for months without fully acknowledging it. "I do feel something," she admitted. "But there are things about me you don't know. Important things." "Like what?" "Where to even begin? My life is more complicated than I've let on. My job isn't just management consulting. I'm the CEO of Vaughn Global Industries." Adrian blinked. "The Vaughn Global Industries? The billion-dollar company?" "Yes." He sat back in his chair, processing. "Well, that's okay. Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because every time I've told people about my wealth, it changes how they see me. I wanted to know you as just Natalie, not as the billionaire CEO. And I wanted you to know me the same way." "I get that," Adrian said slowly. "It must be hard to know who's genuine." "It is." They sat in silence for a moment. Hope reached for more fruit, and Lucas babbled something incomprehensible. Finally, Adrian spoke again. "Does this change how you feel about being honest with me?" "No," Natalie said. "If anything, I want to be more honest. But I need to know that you can handle my real life. The media attention, the business demands, the fact that I have responsibilities most people can't imagine." "I'm an architect," Adrian said with a slight smile. "I deal with demanding clients and impossible deadlines every day. I think I can handle it." Natalie felt something loosen in her chest. "Then yes, I would like to see where this goes. Slowly. With both our kids as the priority." "Slowly works for me," Adrian said. They left the cafe together, walking to the park nearby. It felt different now, this connection between them acknowledged and real. Hope seemed delighted to have Lucas nearby, and the two toddlers held hands as they walked on the grass, supported by their parents. It was a perfect afternoon. Until Natalie saw a familiar figure sitting on a bench ahead. Brandon. He looked terrible. His clothes were rumpled, his hair needed cutting, and he had lost weight in a way that suggested stress rather than intentional fitness. When he saw Natalie, he stood up. "I've been waiting for you," he said. "I know you come to this park on Saturdays." Natalie stopped walking. Adrian looked between them, picking up on the tension. "Who is this?" "Brandon," Natalie said quietly. "Hope's father." Brandon's eyes widened when he saw Hope. It was probably the first time he had seen his daughter in over a year. Hope hid behind Natalie's leg, not recognizing this stranger. "She's gotten so big," Brandon said. There was something desperate in his voice. "Natalie, please. I need to talk to you. We have nothing to discuss." "Yes, we do. I'm in serious trouble. Simone's lawyer is taking me to court for child support, and I don't have any income. I lost my job because of your company's takeover." Natalie kept her voice level. Sterling Logistics was restructured because it was failing. Your position was eliminated based on performance metrics and business needs. I had nothing to do with the specific personnel decisions. Don't lie to me, Brandon said, his voice rising. You own the company that bought Sterling. I finally figured it out. You're the Vaughn heiress. You've been playing some kind of game, pretending to be poor while you're actually a billionaire. Adrian's eyes widened. He looked at Natalie, questions written all over his face, but he said nothing. I wasn't playing a game, Natalie said. I was living my life. You chose to leave me. You chose to abandon your daughter. Those were your decisions, not mine. I need help, Brandon said. If I can't pay child support, I'll go to jail. Simone's baby is due in a month, and her lawyer is pushing for maximum enforcement. Please, Natalie. For Hope's sake, help me. Natalie felt Adrian's presence beside her, solid and supportive. Hope clung to her leg, sensing the tension. And looking at Brandon, this man who had hurt her so deeply, she felt only emptiness. I'm not going to help you, she said clearly. You made your choices and you have to live with the consequences. Hope and I are doing fine. Better than fine. And we don't need you. You can't just let me go to jail. I'm not letting you do anything. You created this situation. Figure it out yourself. Brandon looked like he might say more, but Adrian stepped forward slightly. He didn't speak, didn't threaten, just positioned himself between Brandon and Natalie in a way that made his protective stance clear. Brandon looked at Adrian, then back at Natalie. You've already moved on. Of course. Why wouldn't you? You never needed me. You're right, Natalie said. I didn't need you. I thought I wanted you, but it turns out I was wrong about that too. She turned away, picking up Hope, and walked back toward the parking lot. Adrian followed with Lucas, giving Brandon one last look that clearly said, "Don't follow us." When they reached Natalie's car, she was shaking. Not from fear, but from the confrontation, from seeing Brandon again, from everything. Are you okay? Adrian asked gently. I will be. Natalie buckled Hope into her car seat, taking comfort in the familiar routine. I'm sorry you had to witness that. Don't apologize. He's the one who should apologize. Adrian paused. So you really are a billionaire CEO? Yes. And you were going to tell me eventually? I just did. He smiled. Fair enough. Does this mean our next date will be somewhere fancier than a cafe? Despite everything, Natalie laughed. If you want. But I kind of like the cafe. Me too, Adrian said. He squeezed her hand briefly. Call me later? I will. She drove home, Hope falling asleep in the back seat. When they got to the house, Patricia was there, having come in to prepare dinner. Natalie handed Hope over for her bath and went to her study. She called Gerald. Brandon confronted me at the park. He knows everything now. That's not ideal, Gerald said. What did he want? Help with his child support obligations. I refused. Good. Let his lawyer handle it. That's not your problem. After hanging up, Natalie sat in the quiet of her study. The confrontation with Brandon had been unpleasant but also clarifying. She felt no lingering attachment to him, no guilt about his situation. He had made his choices and she had made hers. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. Just wanted you to know that. Natalie smiled and texted back. Thank you for being there today. Anytime. She put her phone down and went upstairs to read Hope a bedtime story. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight she had her daughter, a good man who respected her, and a life she had built through her own strength. Brandon could keep his desperation and his demands. Natalie was done with all of it. 4 months after the confrontation in the park, Natalie stood backstage at a major business conference, preparing for the biggest presentation of her career. She wore a maroon suit that projected confidence and power, her hair styled simply, her posture straight. In 20 minutes, she would walk onto that stage and announce Vaughn Global Industries' expansion into 3 new markets, cementing their position as one of the top 10 corporations in the country. But first, there was something else she needed to do. She had scheduled a press conference for this afternoon, separate from the business presentation. Gerald had arranged everything, coordinating with media outlets to ensure maximum coverage. This wasn't about business. This was about truth. Her phone buzzed. Adrian texting. Good luck today. Hope and I are cheering for you. They had been officially dating for 3 months now, taking things slowly as promised. Adrian had handled the revelation about her wealth better than Natalie had hoped. He still treated her exactly the same, still insisted on splitting bills when they went out, still made her laugh with his dry sense of humor. Hope adored him, and Lucas had become like a little brother to her. Natalie texted back a quick thank you and put her phone away. It was time. The business presentation went perfectly. She spoke for 40 minutes about expansion plans, new initiatives, and Vaughn Global Industries' commitment to ethical business practices. The audience of investors, business leaders, and press responded enthusiastically. Then came the press conference. Natalie walked into a room filled with reporters, cameras, and lighting equipment. She had specifically invited business journalists, lifestyle reporters, and anyone who covered human interest stories. This was going to be news and she wanted it told right. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "Today I want to share something personal. 4 years ago, I made a decision to live as a private citizen, hiding my identity as heir to Vaughn Global Industries. I wanted to experience life as a regular person, to find genuine connection outside the world of wealth and privilege." She paused, letting that sink in. "During that time, I met a man named Brandon Cole. We dated, got married, and I became pregnant with our daughter. I never told him about my real identity because I wanted to know he loved me for who I was, not for my money." The reporters were leaning forward now, sensing a story. "When I gave birth to our daughter, Brandon came to the hospital with his mistress and handed me divorce papers. He had been having an affair for over a year. He left me, believing I was just a simple accountant with no resources or prospects." Natalie's voice remained steady, factual. What he didn't know was that I was actually Natalie Vaughn. In the months after he left, I reclaimed my identity and took active control of my family's business empire. I raised my daughter as a single mother while expanding Vaughn Global Industries into new markets. She looked directly at the cameras. Brandon's company, Sterling Logistics, was failing long before Vaughn Global Industries acquired it. The acquisition was a sound business decision that saved jobs and turned the company around. The fact that Brandon worked there was coincidental. His position was eliminated based on objective performance metrics and business needs, not personal revenge. A reporter raised her hand. "Ms. Vaughn, are you saying you had no intention of targeting your ex-husband's employer?" "I'm saying that I made a strategic business decision to acquire a struggling company with growth potential. If Brandon had been the CEO performing well, the acquisition still would have made sense. The restructuring was necessary regardless of who worked there." Another reporter spoke up. "What's your relationship with your ex-husband now?" "We have no relationship. He chose to abandon our daughter and has shown no consistent interest in her life. I've built a good life for myself and my child without him. Do you have any message for him?" Natalie considered the question. "I hope he finds happiness and stability. But his life is no longer my concern. I'm focused on my daughter, my company, and building a future based on integrity and strength." The press conference continued for another 20 minutes. Natalie answered questions honestly but carefully, never expressing bitterness or anger, just stating facts. When it was over, she felt lighter, like she had closed a chapter that needed closing. Gerald met her as she left the conference room. "That was perfect. By tonight, every news outlet will be running the story." "Good," Natalie said. "I'm tired of hiding the truth." That evening, she had dinner with Adrian. They went to a nice restaurant, the kind where they had to make reservations weeks in advance, but Natalie had specifically chosen a quiet table away from other diners. Hope was with Patricia and Lucas was with his mother for the weekend, so it was just the two of them. "I saw the press conference," Adrian said after they ordered. "You were incredible. I needed to tell my side of the story. Control the narrative before someone else did it for me." "How do you feel?" Natalie thought about it. "Free. I've been carrying this secret about my identity for so long. Now everyone knows and I don't have to hide anymore. Including from me," Adrian said with a smile. "Especially from you." They talked through dinner about everything and nothing. Adrian told her about a difficult client who wanted a house that defied the laws of physics. Natalie shared stories about board meetings and business negotiations. It was easy and comfortable, the kind of conversation that came from genuine compatibility. As they were finishing dessert, Natalie's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, saw it was a news alert, and opened it. "Billionaire CEO reveals ex-husband's betrayal," read the headline. The article summarized the press conference, including quotes from Natalie and details about Brandon's affair and abandonment. It was trending on social media. "The internet is going to tear him apart," Adrian observed, reading over her shoulder. "That's not my intention," Natalie said. "I just wanted the truth out there." But Adrian was right. By the next morning, Brandon's name was all over social media. People had dug up his information, found his profiles, and were flooding them with comments. Some were supportive of Natalie, others were condemning Brandon, a few were skeptical of the whole story. Brandon's life, which had already been difficult, became impossible. Potential employers searched his name and found thousands of articles about how he had betrayed his billionaire wife. Simone's lawyer used the publicity to push for higher child support payments, arguing that Brandon clearly had access to resources if he had once been married to Natalie Vaughn. Natalie heard all this through Gerald but felt detached from it. She hadn't intended to destroy Brandon's life. She had simply told her truth. What people did with that information was beyond her control. 2 weeks later, she received a letter. Not an email, not a text, but an actual handwritten letter delivered to Vaughn Global Industries' main office. Her assistant brought it to her with a curious expression. "It's from Brandon Cole," the assistant said. Natalie took the envelope and opened it alone in her office. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten on plain paper. Brandon's writing was shaky, suggesting he had written it in emotional distress. "Natalie," it began. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to read this whole letter. But I need to say these things, even if only for my own conscience. I was wrong. About everything. I was wrong to have the affair, wrong to leave you when Hope was born, wrong to think Simone was better than you. I was wrong to abandon my daughter and wrong to ask you for help when my life fell apart. I see now that you were always more than I deserved. You were strong and loyal and good, and I threw that away because I was selfish and stupid. I thought I wanted someone who matched my ambition, but what I really wanted was someone who made me feel important. I know the press conference wasn't meant to destroy me, but it did anyway. I can't get a job anywhere. Simone won't talk to me. Her lawyer is taking everything I have left, and I deserve all of it. I'm writing to tell you that you were right. I made my choices and I have to live with the consequences. I'm not asking for help or forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I lost. I hope Hope grows up happy and strong like her mother. I hope you find someone who appreciates what you are. And I hope someday I can be someone worthy of knowing my daughter, even if that day never comes. Brandon." Natalie read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it in her desk drawer. She felt no satisfaction in his suffering, but also no responsibility for it. He had written his own story with his own choices. She had simply refused to be a victim in it. That afternoon, she left work early and picked up Hope from Patricia. They went to the park, just the two of them, and played on the swings. Hope laughed and reached for the sky, completely unaware of the adult drama swirling around her life. "Mama," Hope said clearly. "Higher." Natalie pushed the swing gently, watching her daughter's joy, and felt grateful. Grateful for this child, for the strength she had found, for the life she had built. Brandon's letter was already fading from her mind, becoming just another piece of paper in a drawer full of documents that no longer mattered. She had won. Not by destroying him, but by succeeding without him. And that victory was sweeter than any revenge could ever be. 8 months after the press conference, Natalie's life had settled into a new rhythm. The media attention had faded, replaced by coverage of her actual business achievements. Vaughn Global Industries had expanded into renewable energy, partnering with innovative startups and positioning themselves as leaders in sustainable business practices. The stock price was at an all-time high, and Natalie had been named one of the most influential CEOs in the country. But more importantly, her personal life had blossomed in ways she hadn't expected. Adrian had proposed 3 months ago, not with a flashy public gesture but with a quiet conversation in her living room after Hope and Lucas had gone to bed. "I love you," he had said simply. "I love Hope. I love our combined family. Will you marry me?" Natalie had said yes without hesitation. They had set a date for early spring, planning a small ceremony with just close friends and family. Nothing elaborate, nothing designed to impress. Just a celebration of two people who had found each other and chosen to build a life together. Hope was nearly 2 years old now, talking in full sentences, running everywhere, and showing signs of the sharp intelligence Natalie recognized from herself. Lucas, at 2.5, was her constant companion. They played together like siblings, sharing toys and secrets in that special language only young children spoke. One afternoon, Natalie sat in her office reviewing quarterly reports when her assistant buzzed through. "There's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important. Brandon Cole." Natalie's first instinct was to refuse. She had no desire to see Brandon, no interest in whatever he wanted to say. But curiosity won out. "Send him in. But give me 5 minutes first." She used those 5 minutes to steel herself. Then Brandon walked through her office door and Natalie barely recognized him. He had cleaned himself up, gotten a haircut, and wore a decent suit. But more than his appearance, his whole demeanor was different. Quieter. Humbler. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, remaining standing near the door. I know I have no right to ask for your time. What do you want, Brandon? I wanted to tell you in person that I'm leaving. Moving to another city. Starting over somewhere people don't know my name or my story. Natalie leaned back in her chair. Okay. I also wanted to ask about Hope. I know I have no right to see her and I'm not asking for that. But I've set up a trust fund for her. It's not much, everything I have left after paying off my debts, but it's something. I wanted to make sure she has it. You can send the paperwork to my lawyer, Natalie said neutrally. Brandon nodded. I will. And I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I know those words don't fix anything. But I am sorry. For all of it. Natalie studied him. He seemed genuine, but she felt nothing. No anger, no forgiveness, just emptiness where their relationship used to be. I appreciate you saying that. But we're both moving forward with our lives. This doesn't change anything. I know. I just needed to say it. He hesitated. Are you happy? The question surprised her. Yes. Very happy. Good. You deserve that. He turned to leave, then paused. Will you tell Hope about me someday? When she's old enough to understand? I'll tell her the truth, Natalie said. That you're her biological father, that we were married briefly, and that you made choices that took you in a different direction. How she feels about that will be up to her. Brandon accepted this with a nod. That's fair. Goodbye, Natalie. Goodbye. After he left, Natalie sat quietly for a few moments. Then she called Gerald and instructed him to review the trust fund paperwork when it arrived, make sure everything was legitimate, and set it up for Hope's future education. It was a small gesture from Brandon, probably all he could afford, but it was something. Then she put Brandon out of her mind and went back to work. That evening she had dinner at Adrian's apartment. It was his week with Lucas, and they had started alternating who cooked on weeknights. Tonight was Adrian's turn, and he had made pasta from scratch while Hope and Lucas played in the living room. Brandon came to see me today, Natalie said while they were cooking together. Adrian looked over from the stove. How was that? Fine actually. He's moving away, starting over somewhere else. He set up a small trust fund for Hope. That's something at least. It is. Natalie cut vegetables for the salad. I didn't feel anything when I saw him. No anger, no satisfaction that his life fell apart. Just nothing. That's probably healthy, Adrian said. It means you've really moved on. And she had. Natalie looked around Adrian's warm, comfortable kitchen, at Lucas's drawings on the refrigerator, at Hope playing contentedly nearby. This was her life now. This was what mattered. Over the next few months, Natalie focused on preparing for the wedding. She and Adrian had decided on a small ceremony in her garden, with just 20 guests. Patricia would watch Hope and Lucas during the ceremony itself, then they would join the reception. Natalie chose a simple green dress, elegant but not extravagant. Adrian wore a blue suit. The day was perfect, sunny but not too hot, with a gentle breeze making the flowers in the garden sway. Gerald walked Natalie down the short aisle, having become like a father figure to her since her own father's death. Ruth was there, and Jennifer Hayes and a few other colleagues who had become genuine friends. Adrian's parents flew in, along with his sister and her family. The ceremony was brief and heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to support each other, to parent their children with love and wisdom, and to build a life based on honesty and respect. When Adrian kissed her at the end, Natalie felt complete in a way she never had with Brandon. This wasn't about wealth or status or what someone else could give her. This was about two people choosing each other fully and freely. The reception was held on the patio with good food and better company. Hope and Lucas ran around in their fancy clothes, laughing and playing. Natalie danced with Adrian, with Gerald, with her new father-in-law. She was genuinely, thoroughly happy. Late in the evening, after most guests had left, Natalie and Adrian stood together watching Hope and Lucas chase fireflies in the garden. Patricia sat nearby, ready to take them inside when they tired out. This is good, Adrian said simply. Yes, Natalie agreed. This is exactly right. They had both been through difficult relationships before, had both learned hard lessons about trust and authenticity. But they had found each other anyway, building something real from honest foundations. Natalie thought briefly about Brandon, wondered where he was and how his new life was going. Then she let the thought go, focusing instead on her husband's hand in hers, her daughter's laughter, the peaceful evening surrounding them. She had started with betrayal and hurt. She had rebuilt herself into someone stronger, someone successful, someone who didn't need revenge because she had everything that mattered. And now, standing in her garden on her wedding night, Natalie understood that this was the true victory. Not destroying Brandon. Not becoming a billionaire CEO. But choosing happiness and building a family with someone who valued her for exactly who she was. The fireflies continued to dance in the growing darkness, and Natalie smiled. Her story, which had started with such pain, had found its perfect ending. 2 years later, Natalie stood in the conference room of Vaughn Global Industries' newest office building, looking out over the city. The view was spectacular, showing miles of urban landscape spreading out beneath a clear blue sky. Behind her, the board meeting was wrapping up, members gathering their materials and chatting about the excellent quarterly results. Vaughn Global Industries had tripled in value since Natalie took control. They were now operating in 12 countries, leading innovation in renewable energy, sustainable technology, and ethical business practices. More importantly, they had maintained strong employee satisfaction ratings and were regularly recognized for their commitment to work-life balance and social responsibility. Natalie had built more than a successful company. She had built a legacy. Excellent presentation, Jennifer Hayes said, approaching with a smile. Sterling Logistics, under Vaughn's ownership, had become a model of efficiency and was now a case study in successful corporate turnaround taught at business schools. The sustainability initiative is going to change the industry. That's the goal, Natalie said. She checked her watch. I need to leave soon. Hope has a school performance this afternoon. Of course. Give her our best. Natalie gathered her things and headed down to her car. She had learned to delegate more effectively over the past 2 years, trusting her executive team to handle day-to-day operations so she could focus on strategy and family. It had made her both a better CEO and a better mother. Hope was 4 years old now, attending an excellent preschool where she was already reading simple books and showing a gift for mathematics. Lucas was 5 and in kindergarten, and the two children were inseparable. They considered themselves siblings, not step-siblings, and Natalie and Adrian had never corrected them. Family was what you built, not just what biology gave you. Natalie arrived at the preschool early and found a seat in the small auditorium. Other parents filed in, some recognizing her and nodding politely, others focused on finding their own children in the group of 4-year-olds gathering on the small stage. Adrian arrived moments later, sliding into the seat beside her. Made it, he said, slightly out of breath. Client meeting ran long. They sat together, hands linked, waiting for the performance to start. Natalie thought about how much her life had changed. 4 years ago, she had been lying in a hospital bed, heartbroken and alone. Now she was married to a man she loved, raising 2 wonderful children, running a billion-dollar company, and genuinely happy. The performance began. Hope spotted them in the audience and waved enthusiastically before remembering she was supposed to be performing. Natalie waved back, smiling. After the show, they took Hope and Lucas out for ice cream. The children chattered about their performances, about their friends, about a butterfly Lucas had seen that morning. Simple conversations about a simple afternoon, but these were the moments Natalie treasured most. That evening, after the children were in bed, Natalie sat in her study reviewing some reports. Adrian came in with 2 cups of tea and sat in the chair across from her desk. I got an interesting email today, he said. From Brandon. Natalie looked up, surprised. She hadn't heard from Brandon in nearly 2 years, not since he had left the city. What did he want? He's writing a book. About second chances and learning from mistakes. He wanted permission to include his story about what happened with you. What did you tell him? That it wasn't my decision to make. That he should ask you directly. Natalie considered this. Did he seem different? In the email? Thoughtful. Genuine. He's apparently been working with a therapist and wanted to take accountability for his choices. Adrian paused. He also mentioned that he's getting married again. To someone he met in his new city. He said he's doing it right this time. Good for him, Natalie said and meant it. She held no bitterness toward Brandon anymore. He was just someone from her past who had made mistakes and was trying to do better. That was all. Are you going to let him write about you? I'll think about it. If he sends his request directly, I'll consider it. The email came 2 days later. Brandon's message was respectful and detailed. He explained that his book was about personal accountability and growth. He wanted to tell the story honestly, including all his mistakes and failures, as a way to help other people learn from his experiences. I'm not trying to make excuses or gain sympathy, he wrote. I'm trying to show that when you make terrible choices, you have to own them completely before you can move forward. You don't owe me anything, but if you're willing to let me tell this story, I think it could help people. Natalie read the email several times, then called Gerald. What do you think? From a legal standpoint, most of what happened is already public record because of your press conference. He can probably tell his version without your permission. But it's respectful that he's asking. And from a personal standpoint? Gerald was quiet for a moment. I think you've moved so far beyond what he did to you that his book can't hurt you. If it helps other people, maybe there's value in that. Natalie made her decision. She wrote back giving permission but setting clear boundaries. He could tell his story, but he couldn't speak for her or claim to know her current thoughts or feelings. He could acknowledge his mistakes but not try to paint himself as a tragic victim. And he had to make clear that she had built her success entirely on her own merits, not as some kind of revenge against him. Brandon agreed to all her conditions. 3 months later, the book was published. Natalie read it out of curiosity and found it surprisingly honest. Brandon didn't spare himself or try to justify his actions. He detailed the affair, the betrayal, the consequences, and his long journey toward becoming a better person. He wrote about Simone and their brief, destructive relationship. He wrote about hitting rock bottom and choosing to rebuild. The book did well, particularly with people going through divorces or trying to recover from their own mistakes. Brandon donated all profits to charities supporting single parents, a gesture Natalie appreciated. She never contacted him about it. They had no relationship and she had no desire to change that. But she was glad he had found a way to turn his failures into something constructive. Life continued. Hope started kindergarten, excelling academically and making friends easily. Lucas thrived in first grade. Adrian's architecture firm won several prestigious awards. Natalie continued expanding Vaughn Global Industries while serving on multiple charitable boards. One afternoon she received a letter. Not from Brandon this time but from Simone. The envelope was addressed carefully, with a return address from across the country. Inside was a simple note. Dear Natalie, I know we were never friends and that I contributed to a painful situation in your life. I want you to know that I'm sorry. I've spent years in therapy dealing with my own issues, learning why I made the choices I did. None of that excuses what happened, but I wanted you to know that I recognize the harm I caused. I hope you and your daughter are well. Simone. Natalie folded the letter and put it away. She felt no need to respond. The apology was nice but ultimately meaningless. Simone, like Brandon, was someone from a past that no longer had power over Natalie's present. On Hope's 5th birthday, Natalie threw a party in their backyard. 20 children ran around playing games, eating cake, and creating the kind of joyful chaos that came with young kids celebrating. Adrian managed the barbecue while Natalie coordinated activities. Patricia was there, having become like a grandmother to both Hope and Lucas. Gerald came with Ruth, both of them bringing thoughtful gifts. Jennifer Hayes stopped by briefly between meetings. The whole afternoon was filled with people Natalie loved and who loved her back. As the sun set and the last guests left, Natalie helped Hope open her mountain of presents. Adrian was cleaning up with Lucas's help, the two of them making it into a game. This was family. This was home. Later, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Natalie stood in her study looking at a photo on her desk. It showed her and Hope in the hospital, just hours after she had been born. In the picture, Natalie looked exhausted and vulnerable, clutching her newborn daughter while the world fell apart around her. She set that photo down and picked up a more recent one. Her wedding day with Adrian and both children, everyone laughing at something Lucas had said. This was who she had become. This was what she had built from the ashes of that hospital room betrayal. Natalie's phone buzzed with a message from Adrian. Hope asked me to tell you she's the luckiest girl in the world because she has the best mama. I told her I agree completely. Smiling, Natalie put her phone down and looked around her study. The walls held framed magazine covers featuring her business achievements, awards from various organizations, photos of her speaking at conferences. But the things that mattered most weren't on these walls. They were asleep upstairs or cleaning the kitchen, or part of the life she lived every single day. She thought one final time about Brandon. Not with anger or pain or even satisfaction, but with simple acknowledgement. He had been part of her story but not the main character. She was the main character. She had taken every obstacle, every betrayal, every moment of pain and turned it into something beautiful and strong. Brandon had thought he was trading up when he left her. But he had actually set her free to become exactly who she was meant to be. A successful CEO. A devoted mother. A woman who knew her own worth and never settled for less than she deserved. And that, Natalie thought as she turned off the light and headed upstairs to her family, was the happiest ending of all.